All right, guys, welcome back to the Discover Eden podcast. My name is Brandon,
And I'm Jonathan.
and this is a new series.
Yes.
We are just exiting Fire and Water, and we're going into the Creation series.
Woo!
Woo! Big moment.
Mhm.
Almost like the Big Bang, but, that's besides the point. And I'm excited for this series, just to learn just a little bit about the different world religions and stuff like that. When it comes to terms to creation story, obviously we'll start with what we know. So what we know the best is the Christian story that you see in the Bible.
Mhm.
So we're gonna start from that perspective, and then we'll take a look at what may be similar, may be different with all the other ones that we're gonna look at. And from what I have currently, I have picked out from each and every single continent on the planet, apart from Antarctica. Uh, I'm sorry, I can't ask the penguins their religious affiliations, but
It's not allowed.
forgive me. But that should give a swath, and some of them are at different times. So obviously there's going to be arguments one way or another, but we'll get into that discussion when we get there. But for now, we'll just start with right from the top, Genesis 1, and we'll go from there. But first, let's pray into it before we enter into our discussion. So, dear God, I thank you that we're able to, again, do this under your name, and I pray that we do it justice. Pray that that we hopefully live up to your expectations. But even if we don't, that first of all, we want your name lifted high above all else. And I just pray that, in the midst of this discussion, that you would teach us things, show us things, reveal things to us, more about you, and more about, the world around us. I pray that not our words, but your words would come out of our lips, and that they would stick with those who listen. And I just pray that you would just be with us in discussion. Pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right. Well, let's get into the bumper. Let's get into it. All right. So, creation. Genesis 1. Starting right into it. When you think of creation,
Mhm.
what's the first thing that comes to mind?
In terms of Genesis 1,
In terms of anything in
in
reality.
terms of anything in reality, in terms of creation, I always think of just nature. You the creation that, we are surrounded with, um, the wonder and the beauty and the majesty of it all. That's what I think of when I hear the word creation. Now, if you ask me specifically, what do I think of in terms of the Genesis story? Well, the 7 days, all of that. That's what I would give as my answer.
I mean, my snarky comment of what do you think creation is? My answer is yes. All encompassing, everything you can, with anything with the 5 or 6 senses that you can, interact with. That is creation. And I think it's a lot more than what we realize, but it's also something that's so archaic because it's something that's so intrinsic to the fabric of reality that, well, it has to be the origin of something. So why you see a lot of different religions latch on to this creation idea is because, well, something had to happen
Yeah.
for everything that we know to exist,
Yeah.
for us to exist.
There has to be an origin point.
There has to be a starting point. Without that starting point, well, reality as we know it ceases to exist. So that's like the fundamentals of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, without that, with that out of the way, so kind of the layout of what we're gonna do with this series is we're basically gonna walk through the book of Genesis, but along the way we're gonna look at different viewpoints along the way, and especially after the flood story.
Mm.
So basically, from Genesis 1 to Genesis 12, I think shares a lot of similarities with other religions out there or myths with creation myths and
Yeah.
all that you see kind of around the world. So we'll take a look at that after we go through those events in the Bible, because that's kind of our bias and standpoint at the moment, which we're all going to have a bias. So I'm just going to put that disclaimer out there initially. Even people that disagree with the Christian viewpoint, you have a bias toward a certain viewpoint or an idea. You're not truly subjective, just as we're not truly subjective.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I would love to be like the person on the sideline saying, I'm truly in the middle. Unfortunately, that's just not how things work all the time, because you grow up in an environment where you learn one or the other, and you have a natural proclivity to it.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting that out there as a disclaimer. So yes, we will have a Christian viewpoint, if that's not already pretty apparent with this podcast. But for all the skeptics that are out there, I was one of them. I still am one of them. Like, this is the part of like question everything. And I think the more we question, the more we seek to learn more and more. It's that you're gearing toward discovery. Because without that doubt, without that skepticism, you don't yearn to learn more.
Sure.
And you're content staying where you're at. So the more we question, the more we seek to actually learn the truth behind the matter. And hopefully this podcast, this discussion in this creation series will kind of help people in that pathway. I'm not trying to change anyone's mind, nothing. But we hope that this is at least of some help to you. Now, bear in mind, we're no experts on the matter. I don't think really any of us are when it comes to stuff way back when, because we're just so out of context. But there's been archaeological evidence, whatever. Anyway, I've been babbling enough. And we'll get into yeah, I know. We'll get into Genesis. So, I guess another point that I wanted to make, I just referred to my notes again. Something that is very important for especially the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these were passed down orally.
Something that we talked about a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of these are going to be story or narrative driven. Whether these events and times are 100% accurate is up for debate. And that's something you just really can't prove or disprove in terms of archaeological stuff. There's been they can find the locations that are mentioned in the Bible, among other things, and cross-reference between different tablets that they found or
Sure.
Whatever. But it still doesn't support or disprove anything because we're so out of context.
Right. It's one of those things you just kind of take it as it is, or
And that's the difficulty with the science behind it all, because you have to almost go and rely on the oral tradition as fact,
Right.
which science is ugh.
They make an audible groan.
Yeah. But at the same time, that's all we have to go off of.
Yeah.
And like the book of, say, Genesis and Exodus were believed to be written by Moses,
Mm-hmm.
just to give an idea of how late this is. This would have been hundreds of, like, this would have been several hundred years from, say, Abraham all the way
Right.
to Moses.
That's a long time to be passing the same story.
This is a very, very long time. Now, obviously, when you get to the book of Exodus, things at that point were more written down. So I'm a little bit more agreeable with more of the concrete stuff there. But when you have specifics in the earlier stuff, that's when I become a little bit more skeptical. With that being said, let's take a look. So, what I want to do to start us off is I want to read all of Genesis 1 as the full, complete story of the first creation story. Now,
Mhm.
there's multiple creation stories in the Bible. You have Genesis 1 and a little bit of 2, which is basically the Spark Notes version, let's say, of day 1, this happened. Day 2, this happened. Day 3, this happened. Like all that kind of thing. Whereas the second creation story, which is the Garden of Eden, is a lot more personal. It's a lot more interactive. There's a lot more relationship driven things happening. And then that's the dominion and fall of humanity in the midst of that. And then later on, you have the flood narrative with Noah. You have Cain and Abel, Tower of Babel, and genealogies.
Mhm.
Putting it all into the one. Have a separate list that we'll go through later on that, but that's just a brief overview. So what we'll do for the first part of the series here is focusing on Genesis 1. So we'll start with reading all of Genesis 1, well, basically that first creation story narrative, and we'll kind of discuss things as we go through it. So, do you want to read Genesis 1 or do you want me to read Genesis 1?
I can read it.
Okay.
Second.
And then I can
Alright.
go with some of the notes I already have written down here.
All right. So, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening, and then there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees in the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and then there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth, across the vault of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living thing with which the water teems, and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, and our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, and the birds in the sky, over the livestock, and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath, that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
Then I'll continue from Genesis 2, the first 3 verses. So, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Right. So that is
The first story.
the first creation story, Genesis 1 and a little bit of Genesis 2. Now, we read this from the NIV. There are other versions that you can read. I do like the NASB, so the NASB, the New American Standard Version. I do like that one. It helps identify some of the things, and then some of the footnotes actually help as well, because especially when the vault of the waters and the waters and the waters kind of gets a little bit confusing a little bit. But here's a couple of things to note. Like, what's something that stands out to you about
The first story,
the first creation story?
the repetition of it, which obviously I think probably is in line with the oral tradition, so people can remember it easier.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of, here, let me sit closer. So if nobody could hear what I was saying, the thing that stands out immediately to me is the repetition of the story, which is in line probably with the oral tradition and those roots. The more repetitive it is, the easier it is to remember. As you kind of said earlier, it's the Spark Notes version of it. So here's what happened here, here's what happened here, here's what happened here, and you kind of do the same kind of phrasing and words, the amount of times that it was described, like according to their kind, and it was like, okay, it's so that people can remember, what the main points are of this story. So that's what sticks out to me immediately, especially, considering the fact we just talked about the oral tradition not too long ago.
Yeah. And that's definitely something I was going to mention, is the repetition that you see. And Genesis 1, in its very essence, is very poetic.
Yeah.
So there's a back and forth, repetition, 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 repetition. You have several ways that, the Hebrews wrote, like in these books, with their certain styles of basically their poetic language.
Yeah.
And some of it is, here's one base thing that we say, and then we add on to it, and then we add on to it. as kind of a repetition
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it.
Right.
Um, and that's one aspect that you see, again, like you were saying, has to do, I think, with more the oral
It
tradition
makes a lot of sense.
because you have it passed down that way. So, especially when you kind of listen to what Hebrew sounds like, it's almost like a chant or a
Mm-hmm.
song in some ways. Or
Well,
I
just
mean,
even.
I mean, okay, never mind. That's a conversation for a different. I was gonna go in a direction that was just gonna completely derail us.
Well, just think about like even when somebody's teaching you something. Let's you know repeat. After me. What? How do you make it easier to repeat? Well, you include a lot of the same phrasing, a
You
lot of the
repeat
same
it
words.
3 times.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, it checks out and it makes a lot of sense. Considering it's an oral culture.
And you see a lot of this within the first couple
Yeah.
chapters of Genesis, if not pretty much the whole book of Genesis, where you would see this repetition or very orally narrative driven
Yeah.
stories.
Well, and even in like we touched on it last week, with the story of Cain and Abel, a lot of it is let's hammer home the big points, um, which again relates to the oral tradition of it. Of boom, here's a big moment, here's a big, something to
They
really,
want to grasp your
yeah,
attention.
so that you remember it.
So let's go into some of the things that are repeated. Obviously, we kind of touched on some of them
According to your kind.
according to your kind. And then we saw that it was good.
Mm-hmm.
The
And there was
morning,
evening, and then
evening,
there was morning, and
yeah,
whatever day it
next day.
was.
So bada bing, bada boom, keep moving forward. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like it was good. Everything he created, it was good. Everything he
Mm-hmm.
created, it was good. Everything he created, it was good. The one deviation from that is the 6th day, it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the 7th, that's where it kind of breaks the repetition
Mm-hmm.
because and rest. And
Yeah.
the 7th day is holy.
It's a definitive, almost. I mean, it's like the end of a poem, right? It's
Yeah.
here's where the
And at
stopping
the
point.
end.
Yeah.
So another thing, and I don't know exactly what the technical term for this is that the Hebrew do, but they like compare and contrast a little bit. So something that stood out to me when rereading it.
Mm-hmm.
So day 1 and day 4 have similarities. Day 2 and day 5 have similarities. Day 3 and day 6 have similarities. So day 1 talks about light. Day 4 talks about light. Day 2 talks about the waters. Day 5 talks about the waters. Day 3 talks about the land. Day 6 talks about the land. Like, and obviously I'm being very generic here,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a compare contrast here. There's
Yeah.
light and light, water and water. Like, and it's kind of going through basically the physical, the spiritual, all it's all encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll obviously we're doing an overview right now. We'll dive right into the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, pretty much right now. So that's the overview. Let's go into first day. Now, do you want to start? And this is kind of based off of a small group study I kind of wrote.
Mm-hmm.
So I have logic and scientific discussion beforehand, and then theological biblical discussion afterward. Which do you want to start with? I know I have it in first in logic and
Yeah.
scientific, but
Let's do that. Let's start with logic and
okay. So
science.
as a refresher, day 1, light. Let there be light.
Mm-hmm.
The heavens, the earth, everything. Because before that, earth was null and void, formless,
Nothing there.
shapeless. Yeah, Spark Note version.
Yeah.
So that brings up an interesting conversation. What's the first law of thermodynamics?
You're asking the wrong guy. I am not a science guy, so a lot of that stuff has not been retained in the old noodle. In
So,
school.
the first law of thermodynamics is you cannot get something from nothing.
Yeah.
So, when it says the world was formless and void, so it's without shape, but it almost seems like it was there, but at the same time not.
It's like a piece of clay, right? Unmolded, and it's just a lump of. I mean, clay is obviously something, and
Yeah, well, obviously it
that's-
gets complicated, and obviously
that's how I picture
this
it. So, like,
science is like, oh, it's a primordial soup and all that kind of
yummy.
all that kind of fun stuff. And then let there be light.
Yeah.
To me, sounds like the Big Bang,
Sure.
where the
This
explosion
rapid
of
expansion.
the rapid expansion of the universe that seemingly happened out of, well, nowhere. Well, if you can't have, the first law of thermodynamics says you can't have something from nothing,
Right.
which means something had to be there from the beginning of
Something
time.
to spark the.
Well, and what is that something?
Well, I mean, I've got a bias, so I would tell
Well,
you.
yeah. And obviously we're trying to stay with the science and whatever theme at the beginning, but it's like science
Yeah.
doesn't like pointing figures and saying, "Oh yeah," and then you get the whole discussion of, "Oh, it's wormholes and aliens."
Well, it reminds me of, I don't remember what's his name. He's an apologist when I was studying apologetics in college, but he had and it goes into the deeper question of, who created God. But he basically, J. Warner Wallace was the apologist. He's a homicide detective, was an atheist for a long time, became a Christian. But he was saying, when it gets down to it, everybody believes in an uncreated creator. The question is it personal or impersonal? And he kind of went into the whole Big Bang, like, oh, well, if it's an impersonal creator, it could be this, and this. But you have to account for randomness and chance, which, while statistically possible, is not statistically reasonable. So where, you're still taking a leap of faith, but that leap of faith from, believing in God to believing in whatever else in which there's randomness, that jump is significantly farther. So where yeah.
And the more I talk to people, believe there's a higher being or higher power out there. Not everybody I talk to. And that I'm A-okay with. Like, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm not trying to, like, force you to believe one thing. But as long as you can get the mind flowing,
Sure.
and being able to think for yourself, to be able to kind of look into these things, actually with a curious mind, I think that speaks volumes because God will move in the midst of that.
Sure.
Because I'm not trying to force anybody into a certain direction. Sure, I have my proclivities and my natural bias because of how I grew up and where I grew up and what I've kind of known my whole life. And again, that also kind of ties into what you see in different religions and different things like that. People will absorb what's there around the culture.
Yeah.
Because it's what they can comprehend and understand. So that's something you see a lot of. And again, we'll get back to this once we get to the other world religions because...
Are we talking about aliens again?
Probably not. But maybe.
You never know.
So going, again, back to first law of thermodynamics.
Gotta be something.
There has to be something there. Just from a purely scientific standpoint, something had to be there at the start. Something that has always been. Which is a struggle for scientists to kind of deal with because, well, that kind of points out that there had to be something that's intentional.
Yeah.
and like all that, like how did the world start? And obviously that gets to way more theological, philosophical questions,
Yep.
which just goes too much into the weeds for this current iteration right now of the podcast. But those are obviously big questions that are being asked. And of course, the early humans, early civilizations would have been like, yeah, so how did we come to be? That's kind of an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
What's our purpose? And some of that we still we're still challenged by that.
Yeah.
Purpose, identity, why are we here? What is our purpose? What, like, all that stuff still exists even to this day. It's an archaic thought, but at the same time, it's a very real thought.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's go into the little bit of theological, biblical discussion. So, back into Genesis 1, 1 through 5. What is the light and darkness referenced?
I mean,
And going back to, day 4, it's not the sun and the moon and the stars because that's on day 4. So what is the light and darkness?
it's a great question. I've never actually thought about that.
That's why it's in my small group study.
I gotta look at the whole thing now.
This is why we start with reading the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there is a little bit of that repetition to it as well. The light and the light. But what is the first light versus the second light? What makes the day and the night? Now, I know what I wrote down on this thing, but I'll let you kind of go through it, and if anybody wants to look up the verses we're looking at as well, then feel free to do that so you can kind of cross-reference yourself, look at different translations, whatever works best for you.
Like I said, I've never thought about it this way. So I mean, it's kind of throwing me through a loop. I don't know.
Big questions.
Yeah.
Big question. It is a theological question. There you go. And I specifically say theological here because, again, these are narrative driven. These are orally passed down. Did this act is the 7 days 7 literal days, 7 chunks of time, or is this all a big narrative?
Yeah.
That's where it becomes a little bit complicated. But at the end of the day, it was passed down as a story for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that was a story that was borrowed from a different source and repurposed and changed a little bit to fit the culture and the norm, or otherwise, every story has a purpose. Which means even the poetic intricacies of this story, I think, can be analyzed and understood in different ways. And this is why, in the Bible, when you read it, new things stick out each and every time you read it.
Mm-hmm.
New different things will stick out in ways that you may not have seen it before.
Sure.
Just as in the way that, well, you didn't think about what was the first light.
Yeah. Because I mean, the assumption is always, well, he says day and night, so my assumption would be, it's the sun. But you're right. I mean, it's mentioned later that the sun, at least in the story, didn't come until later. So it throws you off guard. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't.
I have a theory, and
Okay.
it's a working theory because
a working theory.
that's how things work.
Mm-hmm.
So we know it can't be the celestial bodies, sun, moon, stars.
Yeah.
Because they were created on the 4th day. So is this just the writing style because it follows that pattern of light, water, land, white, water, land? Or is it more akin to spoken word? Is there meaning behind it?
Well, that's, I think, struggle is there like a deeper meaning behind it or not?
And I personally, from what I've understood of Hebraic literature, is there is a lot of hidden meanings behind a lot of things. You see this everywhere in scripture. So for me, and this is according to me, ATB, I think this is an indication of the formation of the spiritual realm and separating it from that of the physical. So it said at the beginning that the earth was formless and void. So it didn't have light. It was dark, formless, void, darkness, night, if you will. And that light is more on the spiritual side. What we would term today is like a heaven or hell. And bear in mind, Earth is still formless at this point. There's just the cycles of day and night. Now, that's an entirely different conversation of what is this cycle of day and night, because you see this cycle happen day after day after day in the creation story. Well, it's not the same kind of day that you think of when you think of, it's day as in sun, moon, day, night. It's a little bit different than that. So what is this hypothetical day? Well, then that gets into a whole different can of worms. And that, I honestly don't know. And I'm going to put it out there because I'm not going to know everything that's in here. I'm no expert. These are just working theories, working hypotheses. I'm a scientist at heart. And some of these things fascinate me because they're interesting, but at the same time, you don't want to be so sucked in and absorbed in them that they dominate your thought. Because at the end of the day, it's just a story. And that's why like something like old Earth creationists, new Earth creationists, different thing like, is the Earth really old? Is it really young? My question is, does it really matter?
Do I actually care?
Like, because at the end of the day, does that change your faith?
No.
No.
Not particularly. It's
Sure,
it's kind of fun to think about, but at the end of the day, like you said, I mean it's not
sure,
something
there
I'm
may
gonna
be
lose sleep over.
there may be fun things to explore and
Sure,
go deeper
of
into the
course.
what's the world around us. But that's not formational to my faith.
I'm not gonna lose sleep over it.
Yeah. And maybe that's kind of the point of some of it. Maybe it's said in a narrative way of days. Because it doesn't honestly really matter. But again, that's an opinion of mine. If you really wanted to know my opinion, I'm neither old Earth nor new Earth. I am somewhere smack dab in the middle.
Middle Earth.
I know. Middle Earth. There you go. There you go. Tolkien, we're in your planet. Yeah. Anything. Okay. So for day one, anything else stand out?
Just double check, make sure.
I said my 2 cents.
Nothing in particular. I mean,
the
only thing that's kind of interesting to me, and I feel like we kind of already briefly touched on it with your ATB theory of spiritual realms, but and seeing it now and talking about it, the darkness was always kind of just there. It's the void. But yeah, I mean, it's only the light that's called good, in that moment. Only the creation, the actual thing that was brought into existence in that moment. That's it. That's the only other thing.
I mean, and this is where it's like, there's, and I know I'll get to this. We'll get to this later when we talk about other creation myths as well. So, ex nihilo, or I probably butchered that, out of nothing, is one of the things for this creation story in particular, because
Mm-hmm.
came from nothing, there's something. Whoop de doo. Um, but I think another little layer of this aspect, it also borrows from another standpoint, which is out of chaos.
Mm.
So, chaos theory, a little bit. What is darkness? Well, darkness is chaos. Darkness is something like that. It was something that's primordial, something that has always kind of existed.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this in different uh, myths and things like that.
Right.
So, what is this? Well, darkness. Well, this darkness, again, kind of going back to the spirituality side of things, could be hell, the
Mm-hmm.
underworld, because it's natural chaos, the chaotic order of things. And I think bears probably quite a bit of semblance to, the original source of which some of this was founded on, which a lot of it is chaos theory, different things like that. But anyway, that's off of what you said.
Yeah. No, I just stands out as a little interesting, but other than that, I think most of it's been
Again,
covered.
these are Spark Note versions. They're very that's what I call Genesis 1. Spark Note version, which means it's quite easy to look at in terms of like a small group study, and then you can get to some bigger questions and
Mm-hmm.
things they can ask. I think day one has probably one of the biggest questions because you can cross reference it with, what's in day four? Or, oh, well, that limits options. But then you have also the repetition aspect of it as well and what plays into what.
Sure.
But we're so far, again, out of context here. The true meaning of it, I think, can be lost, although we can give our own interpretations of it. Anyway, that is day one.
Beautiful.
And next episode, we will go into day two.
Bum, bum, bum.
Anyway, that'll be it for this episode. And we'll catch you next time. Peace.